Welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Glad that you could join us once again. I'm going to have a conversation with Mr. Kyle Silvestro. He's CEO of the healthcare software company SyTrue Incorporated. And he's joining us here on Health Professional Radio to talk about SyTrue's natural language processing operating system and how they're offering their services for free for COVID-19 studies. Welcome to the program, Kyle Silvestro. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
You're with the company SyTrue. Give us a brief background about yourself, and then let's talk about SyTrue's mission.
Yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of SyTrue. So it started SyTrue late 2012, really looking at the challenges of healthcare and, looking at an opportunity to really shift $1 trillion in cost. That's in our opinion, being wasted today. So really was started to think about how do we start tackling that challenge.
So what are you currently working on to that end?
So maybe let me frame a little bit of the problem that we're looking to address, or that we address as SyTrue. So have you ever thought about what 1 billion documents look like? So 1 billion pieces of paper kind of stacked end on end looks like?
Probably like a building.
Very similar. If you were to stack 1 billion documents end on end, it would actually take you about 31.4 miles down the road.
Wow.
So if you were to think about the totality of that in U.S. healthcare, we generate 4 billion pieces of paper. So, roughly 124 miles of paper every year. So think about that differently. You could get in your car and drive for 2 miles. And along that journey, you would find nothing but stacks of individual pieces of paper. The problem with paper, or the problem with Microsoft Word documents, is they have to be read. And here we have a bottleneck in healthcare, is we have an overload of data. We're drowning in documents and a thirst for knowledge. So there's no good way today to be able to take those 4 billion documents and turn that into information that can be used for a variety of purposes downstream. Most of us have been to a physician's office, and as you're talking to a physician, what they're doing is typing in a screen.
Absolutely.
Well, then they hand you a document, and then what do you have to do? You have to read. That's a very common occurrence for all of our healthcare professionals. They're given nothing but documents to read. So unless you put a technology behind that document to turn it into data, those are as good as the piece of paper that they're printed on. They're not usable. And you are not able to hire an army big enough to read and extract all that information contained within those documents. And so what does that lead to? That leads to challenges downstream in the healthcare community or healthcare system, continuum of care. Because what happens is when a patient goes to see another physician, typically they may bring a file that's 2 inches thick, and they hand it to that physician. More often than not, that physician might put it down on the side and then go ahead and ask the patient all of the same questions all over again and create a new piece of paper. So what does that mean further downstream? So as you look at health insurance companies and the responsible parties to bill, whether that be CMS or one of the large insurance plans, they pay a bill and then they look to audit information. And so that data that they get, the information on that encounter that they went to within the hospital, comes in the form of a document. They get, 2,000 pages of information. And then they turn around and hand that to a nurse and say, read. So we're asking teams of nurses, high value care personnel, to do nothing but read and extract. So how do we change this model? How do we change a model that is a retrospective, very human intensive model that requires people to read 4 billion pieces of information if they're going to touch everything that was created? And how do we create a service that's going to automate this process, remove the human bottlenecks, and really create an exponential uplift to drive information, almost like a publishing system. Whereas information is coming in, the computer is reading, it's understanding, it's extracting knowledge and driving that knowledge downstream to caregivers, to care coordinators, to health insurance companies, to the patient, in order to add value in their experience, rather than a stack of paper that is unusable to anybody.
How does the platform determine what data is relevant to which process throughout the healthcare experience of a particular patient, from the diagnosis, how that's going to be paid for, how it's going to be interpreted in elsewhere, and how it's ultimately going to be reimbursed? How does it determine which data is pertinent and which is trash?
When we think of healthcare, we think of payment and reimbursement. We don't think of outcomes and how's a patient getting better and how are we actually paying for quality. So as you think about the problem of healthcare is a lifelong journey. And at different points in your life, you're going to need different interventions to occur. And at this point in time, I would argue that we have general knowledge around individuals and how they evolve through their care journey in life. I don't think we have precise knowledge or enough knowledge to say truly in a predictive nature what's going to impact a sole individual. So with that in mind, we shouldn't think about healthcare data as a single episode. I'm here in this room today and I need to generate something so I can create a bill. We need to think about healthcare data as a journey, and we got to create a path, what's called a longitudinal health record. So at any point in time, different people can look at that information and draw different conclusions about what's facing the patient today. So rather than looking at data in an isolated nature, meaning you walk in the physician office and they've taken 5 minutes of information from you, a physician can look at the last 15 years of data, look at data that's come off your iPhone, Apple Watch, other devices, and be able to cumulatively put that together into a predictive model, tied into potentially your genome that's going to be a specific treatment pattern for you. So really, the goal is how do you take documents and turn them into data for uses that we haven't even thought about today that are going to be applicable in months to years to come.
How would you think that this NLP would help us, especially now in this COVID-19 situation where we are looking desperately for knowledge and trying to apply that knowledge very, very quickly toward an outcome, as you say, a positive healthcare outcome, regardless of payer or payee?
Our SyTrue SyHealth solution is perfectly suited for this pandemic. I think in moments of crisis there are opportunities for technologies to shine. And today SyTrue is one of those, I believe, that can help address this problem. So if you look at the challenge I was just talking about, we're creating 4 billion documents in the United States every year. And I'll focus on the U.S. problem and then global problem as I address this question. But we are now anticipating caseloads of physicians are going to increase 4, 5, 6x. How are physicians actually going to be able to document their care when today it takes an hour to 2 hours to chart in current systems? So if you've increased their caseload by 4 to 5x, one could argue it's going to take 4 to 10, 8 hours to just chart cases. That's not going to be fathomable. So what do? We enable physicians and we enable the world to essentially move to documenting via voice, documenting via transcription, documenting via natural methods. That would be a quick process that can then be turned into a document. And what do? We enable the collation of these documents, the collection of all of this data, both in the United States and a global level, to be collected and from documents turned into knowledge, turned into data in real time. This data can then be fed in near real time to public health departments, to the CDC, to the HHS, to these to pharmaceutical companies that are looking for patients for clinical trials. All of the data that's created now around that patient journey around COVID can be codified into machine readable information used to drive knowledge to researchers, caregivers, public health authorities, and governments around the world.
Now, I understand you are offering your services for free for COVID-19 studies. How do those who are looking to get that information, how do they connect with your company and possibly get the benefits of your services? How do they reach out to you?
So there's two ways. They can go to our website at SyTrue.com. Mm-hmm. Also, we've partnered with Microsoft and have a COVID offering available in the Microsoft Marketplace. If you go to the Microsoft Marketplace and type in COVID-19, you will find our SyHealth solution located there also.
Great.
That can be purchased in real time.
Kyle, thank you so much for joining us here on Health Professional Radio. I know that 10, 11 minutes is not nearly enough time to cover such a vast topic and talk about the benefits that SyTrue can offer. I'm hoping that we'll talk again and keep us abreast of what's going on with your company, especially during this time.
Thank you, and thank you for your time today.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Listen in, download at SoundCloud, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com, Health Professional Radio.